What is up, everybody? 2019 is in the rearview mirror, but I thought we'd hit reverse and back over its corpse one last time and talk about some of my favorite films of the year. Before we get started, I just want to say I decided for the purposes of this list to cut myself off by establishing a rule that I'm only including movies on this list that I actually saw in 2019. So if some of your favorite movies aren't on my list, maybe it's because I just didn't see them. And let's just go with that. Special shout out to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I didn't get a chance to see it. I'm pretty convinced it would have been in my top 10, but God forbid they bring a beautiful lesbian romance period drama to Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm still mad about it.
Ça fait des années que je rêve de faire ça. Mourir. Courir.
Last couple things, obviously these are my opinions and not yours, so if you disagree with them, then well, that's just the nature of opinions, isn't it? And instead of me having to say it over and over after every film, if you see a film on this list, it means I recommend it. I wouldn't have put it on here if I didn't. With all that said, let's get started. Number 28, Ad Astra. Gorgeous cinematography, an amazing understated performance from Brad Pitt. There's a lot to like about this film. To be quite frank, I'm half deaf. The movie's very quiet, and my theater experience was not the best. Someday I will rewatch this movie with subtitles, and we'll see if I regret putting it on this list, or if I regret not putting it higher. Number 27, Greener Grass. This movie is basically an SNL sketch on LSD that goes on maybe just a little bit too long, but it's really unlike anything I've ever seen. Just check out the trailer, you'll know if it's for you or not. Number 26, Motherless Brooklyn. Directed by and starring Edward Norton, I thought this was going to be a real Oscar bait type movie, and I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't just that. There's great cinematography, the performances are great, some people are putting in the best work they've put in a long while, Bruce Willis. The mystery's not fantastic. I didn't get super wrapped up in the film, but I enjoyed my time with it. Number 25, Shazam. Not a lot to say here, just a pretty above average superhero movie that was a lot of fun and had a lot of heart. I really like the director David F. Sandberg. I hope he continues to do great things. Number 24, Hustlers. Rough pacing and themes that don't quite come together by the end hold this one back a little bit, but the strong lead performances from Jennifer Lopez and Constance Wu and their relationship really holds this film together, and Lorraine Scafaria's direction make this better than I would have expected, but not as great as I would have hoped. Number 23, Dolomite Is My Name. I mean, it's just so good to see Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes back. The film is a ton of fun, but a real lack of conflict throughout the movie really holds this back from being anything too special. It's just an enjoyable ride. It's not something I'm going to be thinking about for years to come. Number 22, Climax. From a technical standpoint, this movie's amazing. Between all the long shots and the choreography and the way that it gets you inside the characters' minds as they're tripping balls, this movie's about a bunch of dancers who take LSD. I love Sofia Boutella, who's essentially the lead of the film. She does such a great job freaking out and bouncing between the different emotions. The characters are paper thin. It's really more of an experience than a film, if I can say that, but it was one well worth watching. Number 21, John Wick 3, Parabellum. I mean, what is there to say? They don't make action movies like this anymore. It's so refreshing how practical everything is. It's so cool how Keanu does all the training that he does that goes into these movies. Halle Berry's really cool. There's a scene where Keanu Reeves throws like 50 knives into a guy. I don't really know what else you want. The movie looks gorgeous. It's fun to watch. It's not deep, but the world building is cool. If you haven't seen any of the John Wick movies, I mean, what are you doing? Go watch them. Number 20, Last Call. I was lucky enough to see this at the closing of a film festival this year. It's a really cool movie with a really cool premise. The entire movie takes place in split screen, and both sides of the split screen are shots that were done in one take for real simultaneously. Yeah, it's really cool. But the movie's not just the gimmick. It's a really emotional, tense character piece, and I really do think that them choosing to tell it this way actually benefits the story greatly and helps it along, and it's something I hope I can put on people's radar. Number 19, Before You Know It. I saw this at the same film festival that I saw Last Call, and I just really enjoyed my time with the film. There's some things about it that seem kind of basic, but there's just a lot of heart to the film, and all the performances are really good. And the lead actor is actually played by the director, and she just does such a great job, and I'm excited to see more from her. Number 18, Booksmart. This movie's funny as fuck. The two lead performances are great. Their chemistry's off the charts. And Olivia Wilde, as a director, turns what could have been a really bland, broad comedy into something that actually has a voice to it. Yes, it's kind of like a female version of Superbad, but I actually don't think that's a bad thing. Number 17, The Farewell. I think this is a film that'll get a lot of people in the door based on its premise of a family deciding not to tell the matriarch of said family that she's dying of cancer and doesn't have that long to live. And I think that's appropriate because the strength of this movie does revolve around how well it executes that premise. All the characters, you understand how they feel based on how they deal with this idea. It's about grief. It's about family. Honestly, the only reason it's not higher on this list is it just doesn't delve as deep as I would have liked it to, but it's actually something really special, and I'm really excited to check out more stuff from the writer-director Lulu Wang. Number 16, Avengers Endgame. There's really no denying the achievement that this film is. It satisfyingly concludes well over a decade of films, brings it all together, does something really interesting with it. There's things about this film I was just okay with, there's things about this film I really liked, and there's a couple things about this film I really loved. While I was sitting in the theater, I was pretty invested. Will I ever watch this movie again? Probably not, but I just think what they've done here can't be understated. Number 15, Us. This film is kind of complicated for me because I feel like every time I want to talk about it, I just want to focus on the big plot holes and the way it doesn't quite come together. Having said all of that, all the performances are just too good. Lupita Nyong'o pulls double duty in the film, and she's just unbelievable. I love the way Jordan Peele directs films. This movie looks gorgeous. It's fun to watch. It's really funny at times, too. I think that despite all the flaws I perceive in it, there's really nothing else like it out there. I'll be front row center for every film that Jordan Peele makes. Number 14, Under the Silver Lake. I have very complicated feelings about this film, which I feel is appropriate because it's a very complicated movie. I also think when it comes to this movie, I might just be dumb. I feel like there's so much going on thematically with it. There's some really cool themes in here about the way that the rich treat people, and especially the way the rich and the way Hollywood treats women. I think Andrew Garfield's character, even though he's this slacker piece of shit, he's A, weirdly compelling, and B, I think supposed to be representative of the audience in a way. There's no denying how gorgeously shot it is and how fun it is to delve into some of the mysteries that Garfield's character delves into. And I think there's some real standout scenes in this film, particularly one involving Topher Grace and a drone that you'll just have to see for yourself. Number 13, Alita Battle Angel. I love anime, and this movie might be the most live-action anime to ever anime. People made fun of Rosa Salazar's big-ass eyes, but I fucking love them. I love Robert Rodriguez's direction in this film. Some of the fights are just... I've just never seen anything like it done in live action. I found Elita to be a really compelling character. I loved her journey. I felt really satisfied by the end of the movie. I feel like people didn't give this a lot of credit when it came out. There's so many strong performances in it. It just embraces a story ripped straight from the pages of a manga. It's so cool. I think both as an anime film and as an action film, it just excels, and I really, really enjoyed it. Number 12, All Creatures Here Below. This is a film I'm worried will fly under a lot of people's radars, and I'm hoping by talking about it, I'll at least bring it to the attention of some people. I don't really want to spoil a whole lot about the film. It's a very interesting story about two people on the run for a very specific reason that, again, I don't want to spoil. It's pretty fun, but I don't mean to hit the word fun too much because this is a very dark, bleak movie, but man, is it dark and bleak in the best way. As harsh as it can be sometimes, I just felt so invested in the characters because they felt so real. I mean, it's gorgeously shot. The performances, the dialogue, they're so on point. I'm excited to watch this again in the future. Number 11, Midsummer. You should know that this film is a very, very slow burn. with the nature of these lists, it kind of all comes down to how I felt about the film, and how I felt about the film was very, very interested. I was interested in the story the whole way through. Florence Pugh plays the main character, and she's just so compelling. I really can't quite put my finger on what it is about what she does, but you just instantly are so invested in her character. I really loved her, and it was her that kept me invested in the film throughout. And I mean, the film does have a lot going for it. It's just absolutely beautiful. The vast majority of it takes place in the sunlight, which is really interesting. It almost feels like you rarely get a reprieve. It's not your typical horror movie, but everything just feels so off from the jump that I just couldn't help but know something wild was coming around every corner. And it does. And towards the end, it accelerates, but there's something about the world I felt like I could have just explored it for hours. The community, it's really cool because it has these themes about grief and relationships, and I just feel like it handles it all so well, and it's also present through the text of the film. I just found the whole thing very compelling. It's a feeling that I obviously am having trouble describing for something that had as much hype around it. I was worried I was maybe going in with too high of expectations, but it's just such a unique experience. All the stuff that's going for it on a metaphorical level is so special that I just think the film's undeniable, and I really, really enjoyed it. Number 10, Little Women. Florence Pugh, you've done it again. No, but seriously, the cast for this whole thing is so good, and everyone's just doing amazing work. It's really hard for me to fully put into words what makes this movie so good. I think what's so appealing about it is it's so simultaneously watchable on any level, but at the same time, there's so much depth and nuance going on with each character. I feel like you could also watch this movie like 10 times and still not fully get everything out of it that you possibly could. It was an utter joy to watch. There's so many scenes where all the daughters are together and they're just having fun, and their chemistry is just amazing, and they're talking over each other in a way you don't see in a lot of movies. And even when the movie gets sad, which it gets sad, but it's all just so masterfully handled by the director Greta Gerwig. She's just clearly one of the best working directors today. Every aspect of this movie feels like it's firing on all cylinders. The cinematography is so gorgeous. The performances are next level. The script is really good. The only thing that I think maybe holds it back is just that it maybe clips along just a little bit too fast for its own good. It cross-cuts between flashbacks and the present without a lot of indication as to what's going on other than how the character's hair is. You could get easily lost. I never was, but it did sometimes feel like it was a little harder to keep up with than it should have been. All of that being said, though, I really just enjoyed this film. The vibe that I felt was just so pleasant. It was clear everyone was having a great time, and I was too. Number 9, Queen and Slim. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that this movie ended up being as high on my list as it is, but man, it just stuck with me in a way that not a lot of other films on this list did. The lead performances are great. Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith, they're both amazing. Their chemistry's so good. Ultimately, what elevates this film so high for me is how just iconic it feels, and that's funny because when I was walking out of the theater, I found myself thinking, oh, this film was trying so hard to be iconic between the outfits that they end up wearing and the picture they take in front of the car and just certain moments. It felt like it was trying to really imprint itself into your mind in a way that almost felt a little like it was maybe trying too hard, but at the same time, all that stuff has really stuck with me. While I was watching the movie, and even when I first walked out of the theater, I was like, wow, that movie had a lot of problems. It was trying really hard to be this love story and this social commentary at the same time, but it didn't quite accomplish either. But just the more I've reflected on it, the more I've thought about how every little incidental conversation actually has such an impactful echo throughout the film, how meaningful they are. I do want to shout out the director of the film, Melina Matsoukas. I am absolutely in love with her eye behind the camera. This is a film you could put on in the background at a party with no volume and people would still be drawn to it, would be interested in watching it because it's just so gorgeous to look at. I'm excited for every film that she makes in the future, and I'm excited for every film that the leads make in the future. I think this is something that actually is really special, and I hope that down the line people will really appreciate it for what it is. Number 8, The Irishman. This is a film that I think, although a lot of people will appreciate it and understand how special it is right now, in the future, maybe 10, 20, maybe even 30 years from now, this is a movie we're all going to be very grateful that we have. You've got Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci all coming together for maybe their last hurrah under the direction of Martin Scorsese. There was a lot of hype going into this film, and it really didn't let me down. It's just a lot's been made of the 3.5 hour runtime of the film. It doesn't feel like 3.5 hours. The pacing is so good. This movie's so contemplative, and the characters are so rich without hammering you over the head with it. De Niro's so quiet and reserved, and yet you still understand what his deal is. Pesci doesn't scream once in this film, and yet he's maybe giving one of his best performances of all time. It's amazing. And I mean, Pacino's just killing it. I don't really know what else there is to say. If you're intimidated by the runtime, don't be. It's an amazing film, and it's my number 8 best film of the year. Number 7, Miss White Light. This movie's unlike anything I've really ever seen. The tone of it, the humanity that's just on display is so special. The lead character's played by Roberta Colendrez, and she's just absolutely stunning in this film. She just has so many layers that she has to go through. And not to spoil too much of the film, it's about this woman who sort of is in the business of being at people's bedsides that are sort of on the cusp of dying. And the way it handles that subject matter is so compelling and unique. It's so realistic if you've ever gone through loss or grief or anything like that. It just taps into that deep part of your soul and handles it in a way that's so honest and refreshing. As soon as I finished the film, I found myself thinking, wow, this is a film I need to recommend to so many people that I know. And I really don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil it. I imagine it's a film that might fly under a lot of people's radars, and I really, really, really hope if anything comes out of this video that maybe people will seek this film out in particular and check it out because it's so worth your time. I drove over 2 hours to go see this film, and I don't regret that for even 1 second. Number 6, The Lighthouse. I'm kind of surprised I put this movie as low on my list as I did, which I know sounds kind of ironic as high on my list as it is. The thing about it is, I feel like this movie is objectively perfect. Between the amazing cinematography and the pacing, and my god, the performances from Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, it's just an incredible film, but for some reason, it just didn't resonate with me in the way that maybe the other films that are slightly higher on the list did, which is a shame because I could see this being a lot of people's favorite movie of the year, and I would not disagree with them at all. There's a lot going on in this film, and the fact that it focuses on just the two characters really lets it drill deep down on both of them. And, you know, not to spoil anything, but watching both of them go crazy is just so much fun. That's another thing about the movie is I thought it was really, really funny. I don't know, I think this movie deep down is maybe a black comedy, but it's just so gorgeous and the performances are so good. The movie's undeniable for me as much as it didn't quite hit home all the way. I mean, it's something special. It's the kind of movie that I feel like even the director Robert Eggers may never make again. This one will be really hard to top. Number 5, Ready or Not. If you had told me that an exaggerated game of hide and seek would be one of my top 5 favorite films of the year, I would have said, fuck you. That's awesome. And I guess that's what I'm saying right now. I really love this film a lot. I like dark comedies. I like horror comedies. It's just fun to add a little spice into the genre and play with it. But what makes this movie really special to me is the central performance by Samara Weaving, who's quickly establishing herself as one of the best actors in the world to be routinely splattered with copious amounts of blood. Between this, Mayhem, and Babysitter, she's definitely got her niche carved out, and I'm super duper here for it. I love her in this movie. She holds the whole thing together. Not that all the other performances aren't great. I really adore how thematically tight this movie is. This movie's like 90 minutes long, and it doesn't waste a second of your time, and yet it also feels like a complete story. I love the themes of the movie about rich people desperately clinging to their wealth. I love how the movie's sort of a over-the-top metaphor for meeting shitty in-laws. I really think there's so much to love here. I know some people might look twice at me putting this film this high on my list, but it's one of my favorites of the year, and I make no apologies about it. And if for some reason you skipped out on it because it seemed like an over-exaggerated version of hide and seek and that seems silly, it is, but it's also awesome. Number 4, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Speaking of that metaphorical person that was predicting my future movies list, if you had told me that a Quentin Tarantino movie would be this low on my list, I would have slapped you in the face and then apologized because that's kind of fucked up, but still, that would have been my gut reaction. I love Quentin Tarantino. I love literally every single movie he's made. I say that with utter sincerity, even the ones that some people think are his weaker ones, which I couldn't even tell you which one of his is my favorite. It depends on what day of the week it is. The guy's an amazing writer, but he sure as shit knows his way around the camera too. And in this one, it's yet another film that just single-handedly makes the case for still shooting movies on film. This film is so gorgeous. It's so pretty to look at. The movie's filled with an almost unparalleled star-studded cast, and all of them are turning in some of the best performances of their career. This is Tarantino looking back on a bygone era of 60s Hollywood, almost like it's this magical world that we never even quite got a window into. And yet I think this film is so poignant for the way today's cinema is going as well. There's so many standout scenes, and this movie's funny as hell too, and it also taps into a lot of other genres in the way that only Tarantino seems to be able to do, in that he's able to give us these great homages of all these different films he's seen, and I think it's a really good encapsulation of all the things that make him who he is, and damn it, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Number 3, Uncut Gems. Let's get this out of the way right up front. Everyone is going to talk about Adam Sandler in this film, and guess what? So am I. I grew up on his films for years of my life. If you had asked me what my favorite film was, I'd tell you it was Happy Gilmore. The guy has built so much goodwill up with me. I'll basically watch anything he does, even if I know it's going to suck. Just because maybe, just maybe it won't this time, please. Just please, please. Well, not to get too biblical about it, it seems like my prayers finally got answered with this one, because holy shit, is this movie good, and he is so good in it. There's a lot of people talking about the relentless pace of this film, the tension of it. There's a lot of like, $10 will get you a seat, but you're only gonna need the edge, and all that stuff, you know. Yeah, it's true, the pacing is just so tense, it never lets up, and even when it seems like it's letting up, you're just sitting there going, what the fuck are you doing? You got all this shit that's going down on your head. Why are you fucking around? You gotta fix this now. The Safdie brothers have a really unique style. They love their intense close-ups. They have characters just talking over each other, which ratchets up the tension, and it also feels very real in a way. It's a lot of fun. It just gets you kind of on edge because characters are talking all over each other. They're not paying attention. I never in a million years would have guessed Julia Fox that this was her first movie, but it was, and she's amazing. Kevin Garnett just fucking nails it too. The guy's just got so much natural charisma, but don't let that distract from the main attraction, Sandler, and also Lakeith Stanfield, who is just really great. I found the plot to be really compelling. I found the themes and the characters to just all blend together in this beautiful, chaotic way. But the reason that this film is so high on my list, more than anything, is I don't think I had another experience in the theater where I was clenching my fists and watching what was happening and just whispering out loud. I seriously was. Things like, no, don't do this, come on, you finally are getting it together. Why? No, don't do this, Adam. Why? I don't want to spoil any of the film, but there's scenes where characters are watching something happen, and it does such a good job of putting you in their mindset. You just feel like you're sitting right next to them and you're fist pumping and you're like, fuck yeah. At the end of the day, it's a film that I got so wrapped up in while it was happening that a lot of my other experiences with film this year just kind of pale in comparison. Number 2, Parasite. I really struggled this year with what was going to be my top film of the year and what was going to be my number 2. It alternated a bunch of times, and when it finally came down to it, I decided to put this one as my number 2. And I really think maybe any other year it'd be my number 1, but my number 1 film just kind of emotionally resonated with me just a little bit more. Don't let that distract you from the fact that this movie is absolutely excellent on every level. The writing, the cinematography, the direction, even just the way it handles the genre, which I don't even know what genre this movie is. It's a horror, comedy, drama, thriller, social commentary. I don't think there's a film this year that manages to pack so much into it thematically and character-wise as this film. You have 2 completely different families and you just fully understand the lives of all these people. And at the same time, there's just such beautiful attention to detail to the themes of the film, particularly about class divide and what it's like to be rich versus what it's like to be poor, and the things you have to do to survive, and the things that the rich maybe take for granted and stuff like that. And yet, I really don't feel like either family gets painted out to be the villain in any way. It's very empathetic towards every character, and you understand where they're coming from. And all the performances are amazing. I particularly liked Park So-dam as the daughter in the poor family. She's just so endearing to me right off the bat. It makes me sad that some people might skip out on this film just because it's a foreign film and they just really don't want to read subtitles. And I get it. I'm half deaf. I've been reading subtitles my whole life. I'm biased. I need subtitles even when I watch English movies. So for me, it's not a hurdle that it is to get over for a lot of people. But fuck, it's so worth it to clear it because this film is so rewarding. There's so much packed into it. And I really think it's a film that anybody could enjoy. It's so thrilling and funny in the way it handles the family dynamics. I feel like there's so much to relate to no matter what walk of life you come from. I genuinely think I could talk for hours about this movie and break down every single scene and the meaning that's packed into everything. I just love the way the film will introduce something that seems kind of inconsequential, only to just bring it back in such a big way later on. I cannot wait to own this movie and watch it all the time and just pick up every little detail that I missed on the first watch. I don't know. I adore this film, and I'm kind of sad that I put it at my number 2. Number 1, Marriage Story. And this is the film that knocked Parasite down to number 2. And honestly, I feel just a slightly bit basic putting this as my number 1 film of the year, but the fact of the matter is no other film really emotionally resonated with me the way this one did. Even though it's called Marriage Story, it's a film that's about a divorce. I really feel like even if you've never been through a divorce specifically, there's so much in this film about friendships and relationships that go south, but you still care for each other, but you've just kind of come to this point where you just can't fully work it out. It just hit me really, really hard because I've had a lot of that happen in my own life. I get the feeling a lot of people have had that happen in their own life, and I think that's why this movie's hitting a lot of other people the same way it's hit me. It's really special in that way. Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver give the 2 best performances of the year in the same fucking movie. The layers that are going into both of their performances are so incredibly detailed. They'll be acting one way on the surface, but feeling something else underneath that they're trying to hide. I was basically on board for this film from the first syllable uttered. I love the way it opens. It captured my attention immediately. I could go on and on and on about the screenplay that Noah Baumbach wrote for this film. Suffice it to say, I don't think I've seen a character study of 2 characters in a relationship that was so full of depth, so well thought out, so beautiful and heartbreaking and bittersweet, all just rolled into this gorgeous film, which he also directed. And I feel like a lot of people haven't been talking about his direction in this film, but it's so purposeful and it is pretty. The thing that really sticks out to me is how thoughtful it is. The moments that he chooses to make out of what he lets his camera stay on, when he decides to get close, when he decides to pull back. That also has a lot to do with the editing in this film, which is incredible. A lot of people don't really think too much about the editing, but it's so important. And what really works for this film is almost how unnoticeable it is. It's amazing. Something else I really appreciate about this film is I really think it does a great job of not making you choose sides. You fully understand where each character's coming from. And even if we spend a certain amount of time with one character, it kind of swings back the other way. And it plays with your empathy as an audience member. And it's part of what makes this experience of watching this film so unique and special. I can already feel myself wanting to go off on big tangents explaining certain scenes of the movie and how I literally think every flaw that you could possibly perceive in the film is actually a strength and meant to be there on purpose. I'm just gonna leave it at, well, I mean, putting this movie at my number 1 spot kind of says it all, doesn't it? I think it's the best film of 2019, a year that had some of the most incredible films I've ever seen. And I'm really thankful for everything I got to see, and I'm looking forward to cleaning up my 2019 list. I'm looking forward to all the movies coming up in 2020, and I hope if you've watched all the way to the end here, maybe I introduced you to a couple films that you hadn't really thought that much about, maybe you'll go check out. Like I said, I recommend everything on this list, and if it looks remotely interesting to you, it's totally worth your time. At least according to this random guy on the internet. So with that, I'll say goodbye, and I will catch you guys on the flip-flop later.
Being alive.